So this video is going to look at what correlations these graphs present. So it should say what correlations do the previous graphs present. And so here I see CO2 and I see this variation of CO2, kind of this, variation, we use that word fluctuation up and down. And it seems like it kind of mirrors this here, okay? So these seem to be similar. Kind of go that, they're kind of the up and the down here. So I'm seeing kind of a similar variation happening with my global temperature. And then my sea level, it seems like there's a little bit of variation connecting with the sea level here, but maybe a little bit. It kind of goes up, down there, kind of down. Seems like it's kind of bounces a little bit here, but up, down. Then this one's a little bit messier, so I don't know if I see a correlation here, but I see something there and maybe in here, okay? So when I'm looking at these trends, what correlations do the previous graphs present? It's not perfect, but overall it appears that as CO2 goes up, that's supposed to be an arrow pointing up, sorry, global temperature goes up, and here we could say sea level goes up. Seems like we see that connection, and the opposite, or sometimes I use the phrase vice versa. As CO2 goes down, global temp goes down and sea level goes down. So that seems to be the correlations that we're seeing on this graph. Now, the second question is, do these graphs mean that the CO2 causes temperature change, or the temperature changes the CO2 levels? So this is where you get into a big argument about causation. So the second question here is, do these graphs mean that CO2 causes temperature change, or temperature change causes CO2, or they may be just completely unrelated? These are some of the big issues that critics of climate change will point to. And so this idea of causation. So for example, if I eat more food, my body weight goes up. You can probably think, okay, if you're eating more food, you're ingesting more calories, your body weight goes up. So that seems like that would be a connection, and there's a logical connection between those two things. But if I eat more food and I discover that my cat is vomiting more, me eating more food, does that have anything to do with my cat vomiting? Maybe it could, and I could connect those two, but it's much more remote or obscure to see how those are connected. So that's when they talk about this idea of causation, and is there a logical connection? One of the things we have come to realize is CO2 is what they call a greenhouse gas. What is a greenhouse gas? It means it traps heat. So a greenhouse gas means it traps heat, typically heat in the form of infrared. So heat, and I'll just do the arrow there of infrared. And so that is why when they see this variation, okay, when we see this connection here between, where this is going up when this goes up, this is going down when this goes down. When we see these connections, we say, I can logically connect these two components with each other. So the question sometimes becomes, does CO2 cause temperature, or does temperature cause CO2? And you can read a variety of scientific research on this. But this is where a lot of the time you look for lags or other things like that. But again, global circulation makes a lot of this very complicated. So do these graphs mean that CO2 causes temperature change, or temperature change causes CO2, or do you need more evidence? We probably would say they appear connected. So they appear connected, okay? And we can use the connection of this idea that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and what a greenhouse gas does. But we would probably want more evidence, okay, to say which causes which, okay? And that's where, again, a lot of research is being done in this realm too. So I just wanted to point this out because, again, when we find out about correlation, it means, is there like a connection between the two? We also want to think about like causation, and people will sometimes throw out words like causation and things like that. So understanding kind of the basics of those ideas helps you understand why some people, a lot of the time, why people might argue against climate change. And a lot of the time, what people don't like about climate change is if it's linked to CO2, and CO2 comes from combustion of fossil fuels, I don't really want to change my whole lifestyle of using my car and burning coal and electricity. And so the impact on my life could be huge if I agree that climate change is an issue. Therefore, people will want to argue against climate change because they don't like the consequences, or they don't like what it means for me as an individual or as a society in terms of the changes we may have to make. So that is the third graph. I hope that was helpful.